Lesson 4.3 is writing linear equations in point-slope form. So far we've written them mostly in slope-intercept form. We did look a little bit at standard form in the last chapter, and we're going to get to that later on in this chapter. So here it's saying, consider the line that passes through the point 2, 3 with a slope of a half. We're going to let x, y, where x is not equal to 2, because if it was 2, then we'd end up with the same x values and we would end up having a vertical line. So we're going to let this be another point on the line, just calling it xy. We can write this equation relating xy using the slope formula. We're going to say that x1, y1 is our 2, 3, and our x2, y2, we're just going to let randomly be the other xy point. So my slope is a half, and that equals y2, which is just y right here, minus y1, which is 3, over x2, which we're saying is x, minus the x1, which is 2. What I want to do now is I'm just going to multiply. See what happens if I multiply both sides of this equation by x minus 2. What happens is these quantities cancel, and I have 1/2 times x minus 2 equals y minus 3. Or, since we generally like it with the y's on the left, I can write y minus 3 equals 1/2 times x minus 2. And this is really weird, I know. We really want to solve for that y, but we don't do that when we are in point-slope form. This is the equation in point-slope form, and on the next slide I'll show you exactly what the form is. It says when an equation is in point-slope form, you can read the x and y coordinates. The x and y coordinates are right here. It's 2 and 3, and the slope of the line, which is a half. So let me go ahead now and show you what the point-slope form is. So this is what you want. The point-slope form of the equation of a non-vertical line through a given point x1, y1 with the slope m is this right here. We're going to take y minus y1 equals m, the slope, times the quantity x minus x1. So this y1 and x1 are the point that they give you in the problem. So let's go ahead and write this first, take this first coordinate and slope and write it in point-slope form. So I have y minus y1 is 9 equals m times the quantity x minus x1 is 1. That's it. That's all there is to point-slope form. So let's try this one. I have y minus y1. Well, notice what happens here, and we'll fix it, make it look a little nicer in a minute. Equals m times the quantity x minus the x1. So I do want to clean this up a little bit, add the opposite here, so it's going to be y plus 10 equals 2 times the quantity x minus 4. And that is in point-slope form. They're going to ask us to graph this. Remember back on the first slide, I referenced that you can figure out the slope and a point from this equation. So my slope is right here, it's the 3, and the point, my x1 is just the 4, and my y1 is just the 6, because it was x minus x1. So the x1 had to be the 4, not negative 4. So instead of starting at the origin to graph this, or the y-intercept, I'm going to start at the point 4, 6. So we're going 2, 4, 6, and my slope is 3. So of course they're not giving me enough room to move up 3, so I'll move down 3. So there's down 2, 3, and over 1. And then 2, 3 over 1. And there's my graph. So I'm starting at the point and then I'm using my slope. Let's try this one right here. Y plus 2 equals negative times the quantity x minus 1. Well, there's my slope. It's actually a negative 1. And my point was x minus x1, so it was 1. And y minus y1 must have turned that into a positive like we had back here. This was a negative. So this is actually a negative 2 because this had to have been y subtract negative 2 to turn it into positive. So now I have the point 1, negative 2, 1, negative 2, and my slope is negative 1. So there's that line. Let's try another one. My slope is 2/3 down here, and my point, to make this a plus 1, the x must have been a negative 1, and for this to be a plus 1, the y must have also been a negative 1. So negative 1 is where I'm going to start. My slope is 2/3. I rise 2, and I run 1, 2, 3. Rise 2, 1, 2, 3. And one more. My slope is negative 1/2, and my point, x minus 3, so it was 3, y minus 2, so it was 2. So I have the point 3, 2 that I start with, and my slope is negative 1/2. So if I go down 1, I go to the right 2, or if I go up 1, I go to the left 2, because it has to slope. Ooh, pretend I hit all those points. It has to slope downward. Next, they're going to ask us to write the equation of the line shown, and they do want this in point slope form. So I have to figure out my slope. I love it when they give me a picture because all I do is I rise and I run. So I'm rising 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm running 1, 2, 3. So my slope is 2. Now, I have a choice. I can use this point or I can use this point. I'm going to show you both answers. You will only have to come up with one answer for your assignment though. So if I use this first point, I have y minus y1 equals m times the quantity x minus x1. Well, really, that's just y minus 3 equals 2 times the quantity x plus 2. It's okay with me if you want to go right away to x plus 2 instead of subtract negative 2. And then I said we could have two different answers. If I use this point, I'll have y subtract negative 3 is really plus 3 equals same slope, and then x subtract negative 5 is really plus 5. I know these look like two completely different answers, but trust me, eventually we'll put these in slope-intercept form, and if you want to do that now just to check it out, feel free to do that, and you'll see that once you solve both of these for y, you get the exact same answer. Let's try this one over here. My slope, I'm rising 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm running 1, 2, but it's a negative direction, so my slope is negative 3. My first equation I'll write with the first point, so y subtract negative 2 is plus 2 equals m times the quantity x subtract negative 1 is really plus 1. If I use this bottom point, I have y subtract negative 8 is plus 8 equals m times the quantity x subtract 1. And that is it, point slope form. Okay, write an equation of a line that passes through the given points. So I have to come up with the slope, and they were not nice enough this time to give me a picture. But I can figure out the slope. I will go 4 minus 6 over 9 minus 17. That gives me a negative 2 over negative 8, which is positive 1/4. So if I use this first point, I have y minus 4 equals 1/4, times the quantity x minus 9. If I use the second point, I have y minus 6 equals 1/4 times the quantity x minus 17. Next, same sort of problem. My slope again, 10 subtract 2, negative 3 subtract 4. This gives me 8 over negative 7, so negative 8/7. I'll just leave it that way. First point, y subtract 10 equals negative 8/7 times the quantity x subtract negative 3, which is plus 3. Whoops. If I use this point, y subtract 2 equals negative 8/7 times the quantity x subtract 4. It's kind of nice leaving it in this form because then you don't have to distribute the negative 8/7 because that just looks like it's going to be a little bit hairy. So from here we can get a point, we can get the slope, and we can be on our way. Alright, here's your assignment for part 1. It's on pages 245 to 246. Problems 1, 2 to 12 even, 13, 14 to 28 even, and 29.